Hey, I'm Chris, and welcome to another episode of VR UX 101 series. On this episode, I'm going to be speaking with a really cool designer out of Jakarta, Indonesia. Her name is Sonya Seddarasan, and she's done a lot of work doing mobile AR, creating her own alt space world, hosting talks on UX design inside of alt space, which is where I met her, and where you can get to meet her as well. So I'm excited for this talk. Unfortunately, towards the end, the audio got a little wonky, so you're gonna notice that it's gonna get suddenly cut off. Apologize for that. It's one of those things about technology. But hopefully, we'll get to bring Sonia back in the future. I certainly learned a lot, and I'm excited for this conversation. So, without further ado, enjoy the show. So, Sonia, tell me a little bit about your experience working with AR/VR products in the past, and what made you get to the point where you are. You're currently a lead product designer at a company in Jakarta, Indonesia. So tell me a little bit more about your story.
Okay, so I guess I started my career back in 2012. And so I've always been in creative industry. I started making product back in 2014 and started as a 2D product designers. And work with multiple companies, startups, and like big corporate, creating apps here, there. I work for a smart city industry, and I work for e-commerce before, and I work for a grocery app like iCart, something like that. But in Jakarta, we call them like Happy Fresh. So I guess I started really jumping into 3D last year. And when I actually started reading a lot of book about it, started actually making some projects about it, I realized that a lot of the principle in 3D is basically the same in 2D. It's just that 3D is a lot more offer a lot more like imagination and immersion, more freedom to express our ideas, and I loved it. And I thought, you know what, this could be like a whole new medium for me to design. And that's actually when I started learning a lot about the UI, UX, and also like Unity, Unreal Engine, and so on.
Awesome. And so tell me a little bit more about sort of the challenges or the constraints that you saw in designing for 3D, spatial computing, and all that good stuff. Like, from a design perspective, what are those things that sort of stuck out for you in the beginning, or even till now?
Okay, so I guess for me, because I came from like a design world, I came from 2D, and I know that the basic principle are actually the same. And I know a lot of people who come from within my industry would probably say that. It's just that when we're actually designing for VR and AR, as a 2D designer, our main constraint is that we were never exactly in touch with like the tech side of the product. Like we know a little bit here and there, like we work with our front end, we work with our back end, but we have like this entire team dedicated to build this for us. And all that we had to worry was more like like the experience, the user flows, and like how it actually looks decent to our users, to support the business, things like that. But when I actually jump into like AR and VR, it made me realize that to be an AR and VR designers, like those are just uh, not enough skill. Like as a VR and AR designers, there's a lot more technology limitation that we need to understand when designing this, because it includes people. Uh, like it's still it's not mature yet in terms of products, which means that it still have a lot of limitation like nausea, or like a complication in a multimodal sensors when you're actually putting like a headset. And you're seeing too much of visual, you're not hearing things, is just overloading the user's brain. So those are the kind of things that I actually really learned along the way. And honestly, I am still learning with different products, with different experience. I would say that would be like the biggest constraint when I just started this like about last year.
Oh, right on. Yeah, you know, it feels like in 2007 when the iPhone first came out, and then you had this sort of mobile revolution where we went from like desktop, PC, web-based applications and web pages to mobile, where things had to fit in the little screen on your palm of your pocket, and it it felt like in those days, for the first like few years, a lot of things need to be figured out. And
Exactly.
I think that's where VR and even AR to a higher degree is at this point, where in general, there are some things that like, since the 2013 Oculus Rift, things have been figured out, but there's still room for learning, like exactly what you said. And with AR even more, especially with, I would say, mobile phone based AR, there's still a lot of design issues with applications. For example, like the heavy arm or the gorilla arm problem, wherein
Yes.
you got to be careful where you about designing applications where Pokemon Go, I would say, was a perfect example of this, wherein you would have users holding out their arms out like that for long periods of time, and this is why they call it the gorilla arm problem, because your arms get heavy after a minute. And so, what are your thoughts about that? Like, how can designers overcome design issues like the gorilla arm problem, for example, or other ones that are arising as we speak?
Okay. So basically, that was a really good question, Chris. So basically, we do have like some certain of basic principle that could help like our designers to tackle this issue. The first one is, I would say that when we're actually designing for VR or AR, like when we design things for 2D, we have screens and we can actually say, okay, this is where the users are going to hold the phone, and probably this is just how far it's gonna go. But in VR, like they're free. I mean, like they can move around and they still need to see things around them. And I always tell the designers too that just because we have like this huge medium, like this is a 360-degree medium, but as a designer, the first thing that you need to really worry about is actually just 180 degrees. This is what we call like our affordant canvas, and 90 degrees towards the field of view of our users. Now, those are what we call like our working canvas. Now, when we're designing the right UX and UI, we better make sure that whatever necessary that we need to put inside that interface or environment has to be like within that 90 degrees. So that actually also includes like um, how, how how much you want your users to be able to look at it. The perfect one, they would say like up to like 20 degree. Like your head cannot even tilt more than like 100 degree up or like more than 30 degree down. We would have like the same problem like what we call like the text neck. Yeah, like we look down all the times on our phones, like we're gonna have the text neck.
Was it
Now
called
we need to
the
avoid
what
that
neck? Sorry, what is it called again?
text neck.
Text neck.
Yeah, text neck.
Okay, that's a funny name. Cool.
Okay, so like you're testing, and then there's like the neck, like you're doing the text neck.
Oh, text.
So
Oh,
when
like
you
you're
do,
texting. Yeah, yeah. There you
yeah,
go. Ah.
yeah. So when you're actually designing things, like if you put on your arms way too long, we have like some certain principle that says like, okay, if some interaction or in some game that you need to that require the users to put their hand up above the elbow, you better make sure that the interaction is as fast as possible. So we have like those kinds of like basic principle. And then if they need to reach something higher, you better make sure that those things that they need to actually reach is not like beyond their 20 degrees, or if it's something like much further, you better give them some affordance, something to actually reach that, because you don't want to break their presence, for them. So those are like the kind of things that I learned along the way. And another thing that I actually really learned along the way is that when we're designing a VR, we need to actually match things really well with our real world, which means like the plausibility has to be there. Like suppose if I put like a banner, like a screen banner somewhere, like somewhere out there, like it has to be in a certain position that you will feel okay, it's a banner, it is possible for it to be there, but I don't have to exactly look so up to find it, but I can still see them. We call that like the vista space. Those are like the kind of things that goes beyond like 20 meters away, or personal space like what you and me have. This is like 2 meters away. So things like that. So we have this kind of principle that we're actually learning along the way, of course, thanks to companies like Oculus, Microsoft, HoloLens. They have like good research foundation. They actually help us a lot to to come up with this principle. And as a designer, we just this is the kind of thing that we need to learn so much more
I want
along the
to
way.
I want to go deeper into the familiarity, the concept of this familiarity with the real world, because one of the things that you're trying to do with users is you're also trying to this is something I would hear a lot at conferences or talks, and it would be something along the lines of like you want to give people the feeling like they have superpowers, and because you're able to do things in the digital world and the metaverse that you can't do in the physical world. And so while I might be walking down a virtual reality street and there is this banner that might be or might not be an ad, you know, what in the real world I would walk past that banner, right? If there was an ad for like coconut milk, I love me some coconut milk. I would just sort of like walk past it and it wouldn't really faze me. But like in the virtual world, there's this opportunity to allow me the superpower to look at it and interact with that ad or that information hub or whatever it needs to be. And so the question then becomes, how do you hug that line between familiarity and superpowers, and also in a way that like doesn't confuse users, where you look at that virtual ad or that virtual banner and you know exactly what to do. And so I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay. So I guess what you're actually saying that into this familiarity is a combination of the real world and also something what I would call like UI patterns. So for example, okay, if you actually go look over there, I actually have uh, like a question mark sign. Did you see them?
I
Okay.
I probably missed it. Sorry about that.
No, I'm not doing a great UI. Okay, but anyway, so as you're actually going inside that room,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm I'm trying to give people more a sense of like what is this room about? Like why is it here? Now, how can I do that? Is that I actually can just reuse. We as a 3D designer, we do not even have to reinvent the UI pattern. No, we can just reuse what is normally being used in 2D. For example, to find a certain things, we need to see like that question marks, and that means like maybe help, or like if you need to find a contextual help, it's like the bracket I. Oh, okay, so this is where I go to find help. So those kind of things is the kind of things that we can recreate. in a case of your say like a banner like that, and you would like say to make it more um, immersive, which means like you would like to give the users more, we call superpower inside VR agency. So when you're actually building, like say I when I built this world, I as an owner of this world, I decide how much agency do I am I willing to give to my users. Can they fly? Can they click any button here? Can they actually sit on the chair and take a selfie? Can they shout? Can they do megaphones? Things like that. So this is just the kind of agency that as a designer we actually give to our users. And in my last talk, I actually did mention to you, no matter where your users are, or no matter when you're designing, you always have to remember as they walk past like a certain new landmark or new area, it is easier for them to actually get lost inside like VR or AR. So whenever they actually enter like a new area or they have to complete like a certain goal, we better make sure that any tools or any affordance that they actually need to recognize what is this, where am I, or what can be done in this world should actually include in their first 30 seconds of experience. It's really important. So even if you want to make like the banner, as a designer you want to make the banners like really immersive where people can just click on it, and maybe something like it says welcome to Kansas City, and they can click on it, and there's like a what do you call this, like a balloon probably come out and say like, hey, you know what, I've reached the city, things like that. It's okay as long as we actually just use the same 2D UI pattern, something that they're actually familiar with. They know, okay, this is actually clickable. So far what I see from testing this world with a lot of users, they're okay with that. So it's not something that gives them like interface awareness, like they're very confused what to do or something.
So in a way, it's almost in certain scenarios, it's almost unnecessary to try to reinvent the wheel.
No, I wouldn't suggest that. At least not in the early days of AR and VR. I mean, we're not mature yet, and I guess if for people who who comes from like design world, they know this app called, I don't know whether you know this app or not. It's called Dribble. Have you heard of it?
Dribble? Probably not. Maybe in passing. Tell me more.
Okay, so Dribble is actually like a social network like website where designers actually showcase all their like 2D designs or probably like 3D designs skills. Like they create like this novel interaction, which is so awesome. But like how many of those interaction are actually that works for the users? Very little, because at the end of the day we are actually either an iOS users or an Android users, and iOS and Android actually come up with their own mental model which brainwash our users already at such ways. So like if we try as a designer, if we try to reinvent the wheel so much in the early stage of like the AR and VR adoption, I think it will get the it will slow the adoption. That's what I feel.
Because it's kind of like it's kind
It's
of like
completely new thing that
yeah,
that users have to learn all over again.
yeah.
I guess maybe eventually.
It's no, you're right. I mean, it's kind of like trying to because that's at a certain point there's like WeChat, there's Kakao, there's WhatsApp, there's Signal, there's Telegram, there's Discord, there's all these different messaging apps. And after a while, I was like, I'm tired. I'm done. I don't want to learn how to like send a GIF on this one. And, like there's just too much noise. And I feel like if you do that with like AR worlds or AR apps, it is overwhelming. It is this, because you're constantly trying to, relearn a new language, or a new whole new interaction language every time you step into a whole new world. It's tiring. So I totally see that.
Exactly, yeah. And that was actually the reasons why I keep on emphasizing, do not reinvent the UI pattern, at least not for now, at least until the adoption is in such state that you would say like it's maturing, where people actually have figured out a lot more within this world. And then we probably try to bring like better experience by better UI, things like that. But otherwise, I wouldn't say that's actually like really wise to do so. Just because it's usable doesn't mean that it has to be boring. We can still find a way to make it fun.
I like that. I like that you mentioned that. Now, I'm curious to know more about your workflow and just in general, like with AR/VR design, like what does it look like to go from absolute zero to a somewhat finished or slash finished product? Like, can you perhaps provide me with a just general blueprint of what your designer workflow looks like? Are you using like pen and paper at first, and then you're doing Figma, and then you're doing Blender, and then you're doing Unity, like, or are you just going straight to Unity? Or I mean, just I'm curious to know what that looks like.
Okay, so I guess initially when I just started this, there was the tools for 3D design was a completely different one than the 2D. I mean, in 2D we actually use a lot of like Sketch. But when I just started 3D, I realized, okay, so Sketch will not be enough. I mean, it was okay. You can actually start from there, but it will not be enough. But my biggest mistake before was I started with Unity. So I started actually building something. I could do Unity a little bit because Unity is actually like a 3D modeling program. So I thought, you know what, maybe let me just start there. So I started doing like a lot of like objects, in Unity. But what I actually realized is that building a prototype in 3D is way more expensive in terms of effort and time, way more, rather than you're actually doing like a 2D design, like a mobile app or something that is by Sketch. It's already mature. We have all the things we need there. We just have to like kind of like cut and paste and everything, and create the experience. But in Unity, you literally build everything from scratch, right? So that was actually my biggest mistake, starting from Unity. And then to be honest, I actually took up a mentor because I was getting like a little frustrated last time. And so I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I just need someone who's like even better than me. So I took up a mentor, and my mentor actually gave me a really good advice, saying that, you know what, Sonya, if you're going to start something in VR for 3D design, I suggest you strongly to start from pen and paper. So we actually have like a template of how can we start from a pen and paper. She actually teach me how to start sketching using pen and paper, which means like, suppose when I wanted to build this wall, I sketched this first in pen and paper, and that actually including of like, if I was standing here, where should my screen be, so that my users doesn't feel so overwhelmed, they don't have to look up so much or look down so much. Or if I want to, like, when I want to put a chair here, if they're actually sitting there, like, is it nice for them? So this all have like some certain of like depth, and these are the kind of things that it's easier to be figured out by like pen and paper. So in my next class, in my upcoming class, actually, we are going to talk a lot more about this pen and paper thing. uh, but the next thing, so once I actually done with the pen and paper sketching, and then only the next thing I do is to decide, where do I want this experience to be. Is it mobile only, or is it headset, or where is it, like for like a completely different system, which means like I want to create my own alt space. Now, a lot of people who actually, and I did learn this the hard way too. A lot of people who actually doesn't know this, they jump immediately to Unity, because actually Unity creates like a really nice high-end VR experience. But if you're there are actually three frameworks that are being used out there. The first one is called the Mozilla A-frame. Now, Mozilla A-frame is, I would say, the most easiest framework out there that is being provided by Mozilla for designers to just jump and create VR experience for like say maybe Oculus Rift, something like that. So they're more like a gaming VR things, something like that. And then the second one, the second framework is called Daydreams. Now jump into Daydreams if you're actually making like a program or a VR experience for mobile. That's it. You don't even need Unity. All you need is just Daydream VR and it will work perfectly for mobile. But only actually go to Unity when you're actually building like a high-end experience, say something like this, like you want it to be like as real as possible, and then you go into Unity or you go into like Unreal Engine, and they will be able to help you to build like a proper immersive experience. Initially, when I just started this last year, I was really confused. So I actually started things from like Unity. Luckily, I had like a little knowledge in Unity, though back then it wasn't enough. But today, I guess when someone comes to me and say like, "Hey, Sonya, like I would actually like to make like a VR or AR experience," my first question would be like, "Where do you want it to be? Is it mobile only, or is it like you want it inside like something like Outspace like this, or is it like for headset, like a good graphic headset, or just maybe like a medium one?" Because it's different, and I don't think like as a designer we should waste so much of our time building that. As when you're actually building something for VR and AR, the most and foremost important things is actually prototype. Is the prototype you have to test, because you will never be able to actually get it right in the first time. And if you spend like crazy amount of time of developing them in like a very complex framework, you might just miss out a lot without getting like feedback much in advance.
That is very true. Where in yeah, you do end up and I don't know what that psychological pattern is where designers or developers are sort of I don't know if it's fear, I don't know what it is, but it's this hesitancy to like put something out there and get others' opinions, as quickly as possible so you can iterate. And, it's kind of like usability testing. Like, and I'm curious to know how you go about that. Like, what sort of best practices, methodologies, or ideas that you've learned on how to do, proper usability testing for AR/VR experiences.
Okay, I guess for AR and VR experience, we actually have like a really specific set of questionnaire, I would say, that is suitable and is being made accordingly to the kind of experience that you are building. But I would say that the most common thing that you could actually go into is three. The first one is presence, like how presence could you actually make your users feel. The second one is actually the interface richness, which means like um, this has a lot more to do with plausibility. Plausibility is when the users came in and you say like, "Hey, do you realize that you're actually on a concrete floor?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, I am." So they actually can match this up with their real world, and they realize that oh yeah, okay, I am actually in a concrete world, or I'm actually out in the forest somewhere.
So just to iterate, because you're a little bit, your microphone is a little bit jaggedy. The first one is presence. The second one is plausibility. And
Yes.
there you go. You're sounding better now.
Okay. And the third one is actually multimodal interaction. Now, this is something that I would say really important because that when I actually started building this wall, I test this wall so many times with users, so many times.
Okay, so that was our show. Thanks so much for listening. I'm gonna put all the links in the show notes to some of Sonya's slides, how to get in touch with her, and her. Hopefully, there's some upcoming UX talks that you can watch, whether in Pancake Mode or in VR. That she'll be hosting in Altspace, so keep an eye out for that. So yeah, thanks again to Sonya. Thank you for watching / listening, and I'll see you in the next one.